More than half of the women under the age of 30 who are having kids are doing so outside of marriage. Is this a result of social mores, government policy, or a bit of both? I'm Allen Barton. Stand by for Front Page. Joining me in studio, Tim Cavanaugh, managing editor of Reason.com, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. All right, guys, this is a story from the New York Times. A majority of all women are married when they have children. However, now more than half of the women under 30 have children out of wedlock. All right, Terry, what's the scoop here? Should we care about this? Does this matter? I mean, we've got a free society. People can do what they wish. What are the patterns here that one should be concerned about?
Absolutely, one should be concerned about that. And we do have a free society in which one can do what they wish. And I wouldn't want to intrude upon that at all. However, I don't want to have to pay for their decisions that they make. And unfortunately, that's what happens when you have a lot of single women who may or may not have a really good economic foundation, having children that they can't care for. It ends up being, WIC, welfare spending at the state level, and also, child care subsidies and all sorts of other things that we end up paying for. So we pay for their decision. The other issue on this that is, of critical concern to me is the fact that, I see government as playing a very bad role, and that means us as taxpayers playing a very bad role in all this, because out of kindness, we want to help these people and give them a little money. But what we end up doing instead is breaking up families and replacing fathers.
That was part of the article, is that there are some people, some of the women who were interviewed are saying that marriage, there's a disincentive to marriage because you bring another income into the family, and they then have too much money to qualify for government programs. Tim, I'll bring you in here. Is that a lot of what you think the problem is here,
No.
a disincentivizing of marriage, or is this something where a lot of them were saying, look, women in the last 50 years made huge gains economically. They can support themselves. They don't need to get married to support their children sometimes. And so there's a lot of issues at work that develop this statistic.
Before we start, I mean, this is the House Republicans contraception panel right here. All the estrogen in this conversation.
We are very understanding.
Exactly, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways you can't pin all of this on the government. This is something that's evolving over a long enough time period that you could say it's a great society residue or something like that. But there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't indicate that. The numbers for women under 30 is almost entirely women in their 20s. That's where all the increases come from. Teen out-of-wedlock pregnancies are way down. And there is an evolution in social mores. Interestingly, the child trends study that New York Times piece was based on never uses the word wedlock in the piece. So the way people think about these things and conceptualize them has been changing, at least since Dan Quayle had his Murphy Brown moment.
They addressed in the article that 50 years ago, a lot of people were getting married because it conferred legitimacy upon a pregnancy that was like an oops baby. I mean, my older sister was an oops baby. They switched the dates of their marriage and publicized a different date of marriage to cover the fact that my mom was pregnant with my oldest sister, and that was 1950. So, there are social mores that are completely different now. I mean, the article cites that 92% of college-educated women are married when they have children. So what do you think, Terry, the difference is between this idea of highly educated or college-educated people seemingly getting themselves into marriage before they have kids at such a higher percentage?
Well, I think they still buy into the idea and structure of a cohesive family unit where you have a father on site and a mother on site and a family that's together. And I think they know either intuitively or literally that that a family like that is more likely to be wealthy and more likely to be able to take care of itself and more likely to be able to send their kids to a decent school. That whole thing, more likely to be property owners, things of that sort. So I think there's it's part of a, I won't call it a lifestyle. I mean, I agree with Tim that the mores seem to have evolved, but do mores evolve in a vacuum? No, they tend to have an encouragement from society, or they're discouraged by society. And I think the overwhelming trend towards greater and greater dependency of people on government tends to push these things further and further along.
Do you agree that it's an increased dependency on government, or is it just an increased sense of liberty, an increased sense of that the social sort of middle class, like you will be married before you have a child, has less weight, less power?
I hope this is the only time in 2012 that I use this phrase, but it's an interesting article in the New York Times. Yeah. They do try to find anecdotes to support all the different theories, the conservative, the Pat Moynihan type of theory. They note that there isn't this big hubbub that there was when Pat Moynihan did it, and I would say there might be a little ethnicity issue going on there, that it seemed more, it caused this great panic in 1965. Now it doesn't. And most of the largest share of the growth of children born to women who are not married has been not in African Americans since then, although the statistics for African Americans are much higher.
Yeah,
than for
well, I want to
Hispanics
get
or
into
whites,
that
but
because it's very difficult. It becomes, I think the number is 73% or something of black children are born out of wedlock, out of marriage. And it's 53% of Latinos, 29% white. So it's much, much higher in the African American community. Can an honest discussion even happen about what's going on in the African American community, or the fact that you even sort of cross, and address a racial group is so charged now that it's difficult to look and say, like, well, what's going on in the African American community? Where are the fathers? What's going on?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the many social ills that afflict the African American community are a result of fatherless children being raised in households where there is no parental control and no role model, really. I mean, a lot of young African American males have to learn, either on the streets or from, an elder friend or something like that, how to behave as a man and how to comport yourself and how to carry yourself and how to do things. And sometimes the role model isn't always the best.
Well, they say, and this gets aside from whether it's the African American community or not, the article cites that children who are raised in a single parent household tend to have more difficulties in study, behavioral issues, all sorts of things. So is that something that we should be caring about? Or again, is that kind of a statistic that you measure based on how the society is evolving and you don't, you go like, interesting statistic, how do we handle it, or do we try to discourage?
I think the only sane solution would be interesting statistic. How do we handle it? The child trends study, which this article is based on, and I don't want to, I don't know how good their data are, but they. It doesn't lend really full support for the idea that this is all economic in the sense of you got to stay on government benefits and you don't want to get married for that reason. There's certainly economic benefits to getting married in tax terms and so forth. And it does, the higher level of highly educated people who do still do the traditional path of marriage and then kids is interesting, but again, that might be a reflection more of, these people are better able to plan their lives very carefully. The article entertains Charles Murray's Coming Apart, which is right here, which I have right here, which is in a lot of ways about, the sort of shifts in the way white people react to each other over the last, he starts in 1963. So I think it is, more than anything else, you're going to find it's an economic trend. That's certainly what seemed to me from the study, that
it's material rife for a Freakonomics study.
Yeah,
this should be a chapter in Freakonomics.
They get into a lot of interesting stuff, though, with
interesting data mining.
Sort of, they channel a little bit. They directly cite Murray. They also channel Susan Faludi's great book, Stiffed, which was about the obsolescence of men and how there are no more male role models and traditional roles and stuff like that. And it was a very sympathetic feminist take on this development. It was really interesting. And that's what a lot of, at least the anecdotal stuff in this article and some of the larger trends seem to indicate, is that men aren't making enough to make themselves attractive husbands. So in the spirit of the House contraception panel, let's man up, men.
Men gotta man up. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Emphasize men. Yeah. Gentlemen. All right, you can catch Tim Cavanaugh's work at Reason.com and see more of Terry Jones at IBDeditorials.com. For Tim and Terry, I'm Allen Barton, and you've been watching Front Page.